What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so I'm sure everybody out there is familiar with social media and big tech and all that other good stuff. And we've seen over the past, I don't know, I guess maybe 10 years or so like that, we've seen that these big tech corporations get weaponized against certain groups of people. Now, the left, they say, oh, well, that's just illusionary. They're just making that stuff up. And conservatives are over here like, we're getting banned left and right. It's nonsense for nothing, for political speech. Now, we happen to look at reality for what it is, and we see that, yes, there's been studies on this, and they have found that, yes, conservatives do get banned a lot more, and for not really violating, the community guidelines or whatever, the rules of the platforms or whatever. So, yeah, we've been seeing this for too long, and a lot of people are starting to get fed up with it. Check this out, y'all. And we've got the interests of a federal agency, if you will. FTC launches probe into big tech censorship. That is right. So finally, they're going to be diving in. They're going to be investigating these places to see some of the practices of some of these social media platforms, big tech, and all that good stuff, to see if people actually are getting censored. Now, once again, there's been studies done on this, and they have found over and over again that, yes, conservatives get banned at a higher rate than liberals for political speech, for not actually violating the guidelines. Because, think about this, once again, we can see reality for what it is. Most of these big tech censorship, these big tech platforms originated in California. California has a lot of liberals, right? They're in the big cities, the liberal cities. So, yeah, the people that work at these companies are more liberal. So their view is going to be skewed of what is and isn't allowed on some of these social media platforms, right? They get out there and you start talking good about Trump, and they're like, well, they think in their mind, Trump's an evil orange man. Well, this is hate speech. Boom, you get censored just for saying something about Trump. And it's absurd. So these practices, they need to spread some of this stuff out, I think. Try to hire, if you're going to be a big tech, platform, you need to try to find, either apolitical people or an equal mix of both sides, right? Equal mix of both sides, I think, in my opinion, for moderators at least. Let's get into it. The Federal Trade Commission is launching a probe into leading technology companies' content policies and user bans. Chair Andrew Ferguson announced Thursday, suggesting their actions could amount to illegal censorship. Big tech censorship is not just un-American, it is potentially illegal. The FTC wants your help to investigate these potential violations of the law, Ferguson wrote in a post on the social media platform X. Now, go to Andrew Ferguson on X. As a matter of fact, I will find his X account and put it right here. If you have been banned by YouTube, by X, any of them, any social media, Facebook, Meta, which is the same thing, I know, I just forgot it was named Meta now instead of Facebook. I'm sorry Zuckerberg, for dead naming Meta. I didn't mean to do that. Instagram, all of those. Just go there, and if you've been banned from any of those, go and let this guy know. Let him know, and he'll look into it, y'all. We are asking for public submissions from anyone who has been a victim of tech censorship, banning, demonetization, shadow banning, etc., from employees of tech platforms or from anyone else who can shed light on these practices and the ways in which they may violate the law. People are invited to submit pictures and documents, Ferguson said, and can stay anonymous if they prefer. He called the probe an important step forward in restoring free speech. The Trump administration has signaled it plans to curb what it believes has been censorship of certain groups of viewpoints. When President Trump tapped Ferguson for the role, the president said he has a proven record of standing up to big tech censorship. When accepting the nomination, Ferguson vowed the FTC will end big tech's vendetta against competition and free speech. The leaders of many of America's largest technology and social media companies have sought to warm relations with Trump as he begins his second stint in the White House, with many donating $1 million to his inaugural committee and in some cases changing policies to align with his anti-woke agenda. Ferguson did not name any specific companies in his announcement. Now, we know exactly who they're talking about here, right? They're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, as a matter of fact, who got rid of the fact-checking organization within Meta and went with a community notes like X, right? Because he found that the fact-checkers were biased, outright biased. They were way too biased. They were censoring people they shouldn't have been censoring, which is going to happen. But, you know, when it happens on such a vast scale, right, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of anecdotes out there. But once again, a lot of people don't like to argue anecdotes because anecdotes are just anecdotes. That's that person's lived experience, which is a subset, you know, within that data set. But we like to argue the data. So go back to the studies or whatever. So a lot of the studies have found conservatives get banned, shadow ban, blah, 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 at a much higher rate than liberals do. And we all know why that is. But they wouldn't, you know, Ferguson didn't name any specific companies. That is because he wants to go through all of them. Ferguson most recently served as Solicitor General of Virginia and was an antitrust litigator at various Washington law firms. He assumed his new role on Inauguration Day after being sworn in as a commissioner last April. Gotta love this, y'all. You gotta love these people. Now, I kind of wonder, where was the FTC when, you know, these past 4 years when Joe Biden and the Biden administration were contacting all these social media platforms and having people banned outright? I don't understand how these companies could go along with that. They most certainly have the right. But, you know, once again, like Zuckerberg come out and said in that video when he was announcing that he was getting rid of the fact-checking organization or whatever, he said they were coerced. As a matter of fact, he said it on the Joe Rogan podcast as well. They were screaming at them. If they didn't do what they wanted, there would be repercussions. Right? Like, now you got to think. Now, that could scare somebody right off the jump. But, you know, in a situation like that, think, what could be those repercussions at this point? Because if they try to shut it down, like, that could be the only consequence, right? Investigate them for something, audit them, right? So the government wields a very big stick. So I could see, you know, an avenue for why these people would capitulate to the federal government. The very fact that the Biden administration was allowing for this, right? And then a lot of people are getting mad at Trump because he's trying to clean house. Because these people worked for the federal government. It wasn't Joe Biden himself. He could barely walk and think at the same time, right? He could barely do any of those things just outright by itself. He could just barely walk and he could barely think. That was evident, which is funny, by the way. It's funny. I covered a news article a while back, and I had a video clip, and it was the social media, not social media, sorry. Got my mind on social media, I guess. It was the mainstream news, the corporate press. They were like, oh, what was the biggest underreported story of the year? The lady comes out and she was like, oh, Joe Biden's mental decline. Oh, we were shocked to see that Joe Biden was that bad off. Talking about the debate. And I made fun of that lady because anybody that paid attention to anything Joe Biden did could tell. This dude is old. He should be, you know, relaxing on his couch at the house. He should not be in one of the most stressful positions the country can have to offer, right? The presidency is a highly stressful job. That should not have been what Joe Biden was doing. So Joe Biden was not in control of the federal government. So for 4 years, we had a rogue federal government that was just operating on its own. Nobody was in charge, essentially. You know, everybody said, oh, Joe Biden's in charge. But was he? Did he have enough mental capacity to actually be in charge? Most people don't believe so. Most people don't believe so. That debate, that disastrous debate performance, proved that outright. But, these people in the federal government coercing social media platforms to censor people, that was a bad move. That was a real bad move, because that all got exposed. It got blown up and exposed when Republicans won the midterms. And, Democrats were fighting tooth and nail against all of this. They were coming in, they were trying to smear everybody in those congressional committee hearings. When, the Twitter files and the YouTube files and all these other files, when all that stuff was coming out, all that information was coming out about the federal government having backdoor access to these places, having people banned, having people's posts deleted, having people shadow banned and taken off the platform, blah, 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 blah. Democrats were trying to smear the people that were testifying. They tried to smear whistleblowers. The Biden administration retaliated against IRS whistleblowers, right? IRS whistleblowers that saw the investigations into Hunter Biden, saw the tax evasion, and wanted to investigate, and got railroaded. They got just stopped. They got blocked from investigating Joe Biden. So they went to Congress about it. And because they went to Congress, they got retaliated upon. They got fired and all kinds of other stuff. But there's many whistleblowers came out during the Biden administration, and most of them were retaliated upon. As a matter of fact, one of the journalists, I forget his name right off the top of my head, but while he was in committee testifying, the IRS just so happens to show up to his house wanting to audit his finances. Imagine that, y'all. Imagine that. You go to testify at Congress about the federal government having backdoor access into social media platforms to shut people down, and an IRS agent shows up to your house. Imagine the irony of that. Like, how many people get audited? How many people get an IRS agent actually showing up to their house? Now, just imagine the odds of actually being in Washington, D.C. at a congressional House Judiciary Committee hearing exposing the federal government for malfeasance, if you will, because I consider that malfeasance, right? That's very corrupt, in my opinion. Very, very corrupt. And the Biden administration seemed to have no problems with doing this whatsoever. And all we heard from the left is they're lying about this. This is not happening. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, well, guess what? Trump tried to get one person's post taken down off of Twitter. It was Twitter at the time. That's what all we heard. Oh, well, Trump is the only president to ever request a post be taken down. The post wasn't taken down, by the way. Speaking of, it wasn't. Yeah, he did request it. One. That's it. There were thousands of people banned from social media under the Biden administration, and they just ignore all of that. The double standard here is so far past a double standard. It's like a quadruple standard at this point. It's just absurd, but I'm rambling, y'all. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this FTC investigation. Do you think we're going to have some change on social media? Do you think they're going to lax their rules a little bit? Let me know what you think is going to happen. And that's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching, and y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.